In the previous learning module, you learned about what a business continuity management system is, the four components that make up a BCMS, and the many benefits of having a BCMS for an organization. Now, we're going to look at how an organization can establish its own BCMS. Hi, my name is Chris. I will walk you through the second part of your BCMS learning journey, where we will look at the different documents an organization should prepare in order to establish its own BCMS. Establishing a BCMS. What documents you need? When implementing a BCMS, an organization can prepare these 7 essential documents to get the ball rolling. A BCMS Policy, a BCMS Organizational Structure, a Business Impact Analysis or BIA, a Risk Assessment, a Recovery Strategies Document, a Business Continuity Plan Playbook or BCP Playbook, and the BCP Test Plan. Let's go through each document. The BCMS Policy. The BCMS Policy is a formal document that institutionalizes the organization's BCMS effort. It's just a 2-page document, but it is important because it contains the organization's objectives for establishing a BCMS and the signatures of the key leaders who support the initiative. Think of it as a binding agreement among the leaders that they take responsibility for the continued operation and survival of the organization during a crisis. The BCMS Organizational Structure. The next document is the Business Continuity Management Organizational Structure. This document is used to identify the people within the organization who will be responsible for overseeing the BCMS. Think of it as a cast of characters who will be making the decisions and executing actions as a response to a crisis. Now, here's an important note on the BCMS organizational structure. It doesn't just involve the top leaders within an organization. The BCMS org structure is established at all levels of an organization because, as we mentioned in the previous learning module, a BCMS involves the entire organization, top to bottom, which is why the BCM org structure is divided into 3 levels covering the strategic, tactical, and operational aspects of business continuity management implementation. This structure is usually laid out in a document called BCMS Manual. Let's take a closer look at those 3 levels. The 3 levels of the BCM organizational structure. Think of the BCM org structure as a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid, the highest level, is the crisis management team. This group is responsible for the strategic level of the implementation. It is usually made up of the C-suite executives such as the CEO, the Chief Finance Officer, and the Chief Information Officer. This team provides top management direction and support in the event of a crisis or emergency, and it also determines the strategic direction an organization will take when a crisis hits. The middle part of the pyramid, the second level, is the Business Continuity Management Team, or BCM team. This group takes care of the tactical level of the implementation. It is responsible for developing tools and templates to facilitate crisis response. It also helps implement the strategic direction that is set by the crisis management team. At the bottom of the pyramid, the base level, you will find the function heads and the business continuity coordinators, who are in charge of the operational level of the implementation. These individuals are responsible for implementing and maintaining business continuity plans at department levels, such as in accounting or administration. Business Impact Analysis. The next document an organization should prepare is the Business Impact Analysis or BIA. Think of the BIA as a tool that will help an organization determine which of its business processes are most critical, and then assess the impact of a disruption to these processes over a period of time. Let's break that down. Here you will see an example of a BIA. One of the headings there says, Business Process 1. Let's say that the particular business process this BIA is referring to is payroll. We'll use payroll as an example since it is a critical business process regardless of type of organization. Workers have to be paid their wages and that's non-negotiable. In the column, Type of Impact Criteria, you'll see different aspects of an organization that can be affected by disruption, such as its reputation and financial standing. Then moving from left to right on the table, you'll see different time periods. These are the duration of downtimes that are grouped in tiers. So let's say a super typhoon hits the country, and an organization's entire accounting team can't make it to the office, so no one can handle the payroll function. Let's zero in on the impact that this disruption will have on employees at the bottom of the table. If the payroll function is down for 8 hours, what impact will that have on employees? As you can see, we tag that as moderate impact. It's only 8 hours. Employees can probably go 8 hours without the payroll function. But what if the downtime stretches to 24 hours? What if it's payday? If you look at the table, we've still tagged that as moderate impact. Employees will probably understand if payroll is a bit delayed since there is a super typhoon. But what if 2 days later, the organization still hasn't been able to release payroll? Looking back at the table, we've now tagged that as a major impact. It's highly likely many of the organization's employees are already worried, panicked, maybe even angry that they still haven't gotten their pay, especially during a time of emergency. That impact further escalates to catastrophic level the longer payroll remains down. And look at the corresponding impact on the organization's reputation at the top of the table. When doing the BIA, an organization should also identify critical resources that will support the critical business processes. Looking back at our BIA template, you'll see these items: building, equipment, technology, human resource, and third parties. These are an organization's critical resources. You'll have an easier time remembering them through this acronym BETH3. Building, equipment, technology, and human resource are pretty self-explanatory. By third parties, we mean an organization's vendor or suppliers, and its partners such as franchise holders. Again, let's go back to our super typhoon example, which paralyzed payroll. Which of these resources do you think will that organization need to get payroll back up and running? If the organization hasn't prepared its workforce to work remotely, then it will likely need its building to get payroll back up. The human resource, that is, the people in accounting in charge of payroll, will need to be able to access the building, to access their equipment such as their computers, and they will need technology assets as well to disperse payroll. These are the kinds of scenarios and details the organization will have to consider when doing its business impact analysis. Risk assessment. After the BIA, which helps an organization identify critical business processes, we now move to risk assessment, which looks at an organization's critical assets. Remember the BETH3 concept: building, equipment, technology, human resource, and third parties? When doing risk assessment, the organization looks at the risks inherent to these resources and considers different risk scenarios. This exercise helps an organization prepare for any eventuality. Let's take the B in the BETH3 concept for example. Say an organization is located in a very old building, one that was built way before technological advances were made in architecture and construction that helps structures withstand earthquakes. Now let's say a magnitude 6 earthquake hits the area where the organization's building is located. It doesn't destroy the building, but it does enough damage so that the building becomes unsafe for people to enter. Because nobody can enter the building, employees, even the ones who have their laptops that they can use to work remotely, can't retrieve the equipment because the equipment is securely locked in the employees' office cabinets. Let's go a step further in this scenario. Say the earthquake was strong enough to affect power lines, disrupting the building's power supply. Because of this, the organization's servers shut down. There goes the T in the BETH3 concept, the technology. And remember, people can't enter the building, so the IT team can't go in there and restart those servers. What now? Solutions to these compounding problems are detailed in the next document an organization should prepare: recovery strategies. Based on the results of the BIA and the risk assessment, an organization can now craft recovery strategies for responding to threats and disruptions. Basically, it's the organization brainstorming on recovery plans depending on the crisis or disaster that may occur. is still using the BET3 concept, here are some things for an organization to consider when crafting a recovery strategy. With regard to the building, where will workers go if the organization's building is inaccessible? Next is equipment. How will an organization replace lost equipment? What can workers use if they can't access, say, their desktop computers? After equipment, we have technology. How does an organization shift to disaster recovery when it comes to its technology assets and resources? Next is human resource. If key people are unable to work or are unreachable, how will an organization bridge the gap? Lastly, we have third parties. What will an organization do if key vendors or suppliers are unable to operate? Are there alternative vendors? Do the key vendors have their own recovery plans? These are just some of the many questions an organization should address when drafting recovery strategies. The goal is to consider as many scenarios as possible so that the organization is prepared for whatever crisis or disaster comes its way. The BCP Playbook. After planning out recovery strategies, the organization is now ready to craft its business continuity plan playbook. The BCP Playbook documents an organization's responses to specific crisis scenarios such as big typhoon or a strong earthquake. It's important for every BCP Playbook to have this information. It must identify the critical personnel and their alternates who will act as first responders. Often, an organization is unable to respond to a crisis or an emergency promptly because people aren't sure who should do what. To avoid this lag time and period of uncertainty, the BCP Playbook should clearly state who is responsible for what and who can take over in case the first responder is unavailable. A BCP Playbook should also identify the organization's critical business function and their respective recovery time objectives. Recovery time objective, or RTO, is the amount of time a particular function can be down without causing significant damage to the organization. This can range from mere hours to days. Let's go back to our payroll example, which we talk about when we discuss business impact analysis. We can all agree that payroll qualifies as a critical business function. How long can it put off paying its workers? 24 hours? 2 days? A week? This is something the crisis management team, along with other members of the BCM org structure, need to consider carefully, especially since workers are key assets of an organization. These are the tasks that personnel have to complete in order to get the organization back on the path to recovery from a crisis or emergency. If an organization is a big one, with several departments or business units, then its BCP Playbook should contain recovery procedures specific to each department. That organization's accounting department, for example, would have completely different recovery procedures from its IT department. What's important is that the critical functions are identified and the recovery procedures are clearly documented, so that when a crisis or emergency hits, the organization doesn't collapse in a panic. Instead, it can pull out its BCP Playbook and refer to the plans and procedures detailed there to get the organization back on track and protect all the key assets. The BCP Test Plan. The last document an organization should prepare when establishing its BCMS is not really a document, but more of an exercise. This is a critical component of a BCMS because it helps an organization assess the effectivity of its business continuity management system. I mean, how solid is a plan if you haven't put it to the test and seen evidence that it could pass muster? And with that, I end this learning journey. Today, we looked at the different documents an organization should prepare as it builds its BCMS. We also look at the importance of considering all the possible crisis scenarios when preparing recovery strategies. For the last learning module, we'll take a closer look at the BCP Test Plan and how it completes the organization's process of maintaining a mentality of readiness in this highly disrupted and disruptive world. Hop on to the next BCMS learning module.